How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Baking World Tour. In today's video, we're going to Belgium. To be honest, I could not find a unique Belgian recipe for bread, or maybe I didn't look well enough. But here's what I came up with. A super soft brioche bun, dotted with hazelnuts and candy sugar, filled with a Belgian chocolate cream, along with some vanilla whipped cream for balance. And I'll call this a Belgian brioche cake. Kinda looks like a sweet burger. The result was absolutely amazing. Burgers for dessert, now that's something else. Let's get to it and see what we need to make this. We'll need a tray with some non-stick paper for baking on, a bowl, scales, dough scraper, a temperature probe, a brush, a spatula, a piping bag, a whisk and a pot to cook the filling in. Let's see what ingredients we'll need for the filling. I'm using some Belgian milk chocolate, and this made for a nice smooth chocolatey filling. If you want a more pronounced chocolate flavor, use dark chocolate or use a mix of both. We'll also need some butter, sugar, cornstarch, vanilla paste or vanilla syrup, a couple of eggs, milk and double cream, an egg yolk mixed with a tablespoon of milk for glazing. We'll also need some candy sugar and some hazelnuts. But you can certainly decorate your buns with whatever you like, and that is, as always, totally up to you. For the brioche dough, we'll need some strong white bread flour, eggs, some cold butter, yeast, salt, sugar and a bit of water. And I cannot stress this enough. Temperature control is of utmost importance here. Your ingredients must be totally cold. I actually kept my flour in the freezer, so it's below 0 degrees. And as you can see, the eggs are about 4 degrees Celsius. I know we're just using a splash of water here, but that also needs to be completely cold. If your kitchen is really warm and your fridge doesn't go that low, put your ingredients in the freezer, but just pull them out before they're frozen solid. Now, adding cold and hard butter into a dough would be quite difficult. So to make it nice and soft and pliable, we're going to press it. Place the butter in between layers of parchment paper, then press it out using a rolling pin. The butter will be soft, but will still be cold. And once you've flattened your butter, take it off the paper and place it back into the fridge until you need it. I'll show you one more way how to control the temperature here. What I did was refrigerate my mixing bowl, and I kept the dough hook in the freezer all day long. And with all these measures in place, we are ready to make the fail-proof brioche dough. So in your mixing bowl, add the water, salt, yeast, sugar, eggs and flour. Now, unlike all my other recipes, we are adding all the ingredients straight from the get-go. Normally when making dough by hand, I would suggest adding all the ingredients except the flour, giving them a mix, only then adding the flour. But when you're using a mixer, it doesn't really matter that much. Now bring your bowl up and set the mixer to low speed, which is second on my mixer. We want to bring the dough together and work it for around 10 minutes. It's important to get some gluten going before we start adding the butter, because adding butter too early will hinder gluten formation. But around 10 minutes later, the dough should be nice and strong already. Switch the mixer off and give your dough a pull, it should be nice and strong. From now on, we can start adding the butter, so switch the mixer back on and throw the butter in chunks. Now, a quick side note on the amount of dough that we're making. This is my full brioche dough recipe, but in this video I will only end up using half of it. I'll use the other half for another project. The reason for making the full amount is that, as you can see, half of it would be near impossible to mix in a mixer properly. Even making the full dough requires some scraping down the sides and helping the mixer out once in a while. And once you have added all the butter, it's nearly disappeared, scrape down the sides of the bowl and keep mixing on low speed for another 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, turn the speed up. I'm gonna go to medium, which is number 4 on my mixer. And I'll keep mixing the dough for another 7 minutes. So back to the amount of dough that we're making. I will only use half of it for this video. So if you want to, you can double the amount of all the other ingredients and simply make twice the amount of everything. Or you can do what I do, use half for this project and half for another. And you can find plenty more delicious uses for brioche dough in my brioche playlist. I highly suggest you check it out, because as I always say, brioche is the most versatile dough out there. So if you see the dough sticking to the sides of the bowl, scrape it up again and then keep mixing. And once the 7 minutes have passed, turn the speed down, back to low, which is number 2 on my mixer. And from here on, we only need to mix for another 3 minutes or so. And once that's over, the dough should not stick to the sides or the bottom of the bowl. And the total mixing time should not really exceed 25 minutes. And that is exactly why we need stone cold ingredients, because 25 minutes of mixing will really warm the dough up. And this looks good, it's nice and smooth and it's really strong. Now we can start the chilling down and the folding process. Get a bowl and place your dough ball in it. Shape it into a ball before you do so it's nice and neat. If it feels a bit sticky, you can wet your hands with water to make it easier to handle. And at this point you want to take the dough temperature. It should be around 25 to 26 degrees Celsius. And this one's just about right, thanks to the cold ingredients. Now let's cover this up and pop it in the fridge for 1 hour. After the first hour of chilling, we need to give it a fold. Folding will make the dough stronger, give it more structure. It will also help with degassing it, and it will help with the chilling down process. As the surface of the dough cools down, the inside still stays warm. But when we fold it, we will distribute that temperature evenly throughout the dough, so that all parts of the dough ferment at the same rate. So dust your dough with light dusting of flour, place it out on the table smooth side down, stretch it out, then fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until it reaches the point where you started. You can actually go past the point you started, just until the dough ball is nice and tight, but don't make it too tight because you don't want to tear the surface. Now flip the dough smooth side up again, tighten it against the table so it's nice and round. Now we can place it back into the bowl, cover it up and pop it in the fridge for another hour of chilling down. And after the second hour of chilling, we can divide it. As I said, this video requires half the dough, so I will weigh the dough and divide it into two. If you simply want to make double the amount of things, then keep the dough whole, and instead of dividing, you can simply give it another fold, but I will use half for this project and half for another. When dividing and weighing, also use a light dusting of flour, just to prevent any stickage. If your scales are not large enough, place a bowl or plate on them. This is quite a big piece of dough. And isn't that lucky, I cut it to the perfect weight. So after dividing, we need to shape them up. Shaping goes the same way as the folding earlier. Place your dough smooth side down, fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach the point where you started. Then flip it smooth side up, tighten it against the table, you can pick it up, pinch the seam together, and that's your dough ball done. Now we can wrap them up with some cling film so they don't dry out in the fridge. Make sure to not wrap it too tight, because the dough will expand. If you wrap it up too tightly, it may burst. And if it bursts, the part that comes out will get dry in the fridge, and part of your dough will be ruined. But that's all we need to do to make brioche dough. After this, we need to refrigerate it, and you can use it for any project you like. You can keep it in the fridge for up to 24 hours, but 12 to 16 hours will be perfect. Now whilst the dough is proofing, we can make the filling. Grab a pot, add the milk and the cream, follow that with the sugar and the cornstarch, then add the butter, the eggs, the chocolate and the vanilla paste. In fact, it does not matter what order you add these into the pot in. We are simply adding all the ingredients for the chocolate crème straight away, because this is by far the easiest recipe for it. I love simple recipes, and it does not get simpler than this. Throw all the ingredients in a pan, bring it over to the stove, and now cook on medium heat until it gets nice and thick. You do need to keep whisking, otherwise it will stick to the bottom of the pan. Stir it once in a while to begin with, but once all the chocolate is melted, keep mixing continuously. It took me around 8 minutes in total, and this is the texture you're looking for. It is nice and thick, and once it gets thick, you don't need to cook it anymore. Now pour it into a bowl. We can cover this up with cling film. Make sure it's touching the surface to prevent the skin from forming. Now place it in the fridge to cool down completely. Now we can continue on with the dough. It is the next day, and it has been cold proofing for around 18 hours. Now grab your scales, weigh your dough, and divide it into 5 equal pieces. Or if you'd like to make them smaller, simply divide the dough into more pieces. To be honest, these cakes were quite big, but I quite like them like that. But regardless of what you do, after dividing we need to pre-shape. Flatten the dough out, fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach the point where you started. Then flip it smooth side up, tighten it against the table, pick it up, pinch the seam together at the bottom, and that's your dough ball done. After dividing, the dough is made up of many little pieces. That's why we need to pre-shape it to make it nice and uniform. Now cover it up, let it rest for 20 minutes. And now we can do the final shaping. Final shaping is the same as pre-shaping. Pick up the dough piece, place it smooth side down, flatten it out, then fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach the point where you started. Then tighten it against the table, pick it up, pinch the seam together at the bottom, and that's your bun done. If you feel that the dough is too sticky for you, you can use a light dusting of flour. And I mean light dusting, you do not want too much. And that's all we need to do really. It's a super simple recipe. And if your dough balls didn't come out perfectly round, don't worry about it. It still tastes amazing. Now make sure you have a big enough tray, because these bad boys will puff up a lot. So leave plenty of space between them. Now cover them up in cling film, nice and light. You don't want to stretch your cling film over them. Leave them to ferment for around 3 to 4 hours, or until they almost double in size. During the final hour of fermentation, preheat your oven 160 degrees Celsius or 320 degrees Fahrenheit with a fan on. And look at them, they're puffed up beautifully. This is what you want to see. If your dough balls are rising rapidly, cut the fermentation time down. If they haven't risen, leave them for longer. It will all depend on the temperature of your kitchen. Also take into account that the final brushing and decoration will take some time. Depending on how intricate your design will be, this may take up to 15 minutes, and that will also count towards the fermentation time. I left my buns for around 3.5 hours. When you do the egg wash, don't add too much. A nice thin coating will be enough. And then let the buns dry for 5 minutes, because we'll brush them twice. This will make the glaze nice and thick and sticky, and it will help with keeping the toppings on. And speaking of toppings, now's the time to add them. I will start with the halved hazelnuts. I actually bought whole hazelnuts and simply cut them in half. Now follow that with the candy sugar. You can be quite generous with this, because some of it will fall off. And once you have finished, make sure to press all the toppings in so they stay nice and secure. And with this, all the hazelnuts stayed stuck to the buns. Now sprinkle the rest with the candy sugar, and they're ready for the oven. I'm pretty happy with how they looked. But of course you can change the design to your liking. Now let's get them in the oven. They'll take around 25 minutes. You can turn them around halfway through the bake to get a nice even crust. But once they have nicely darkened and they're golden brown all over, they're ready. But we're not finished yet. We must let these cool down completely. They should be left for at least 1 hour. Ideally use a rack and make some space between them so they don't sweat. And just look at that beauty. It's like a jewel encrusted burger bun. Some proper fancy stuff going on in this episode. Okay, let's get these out the way and continue on with the filling. It should have set and become quite solid after chilling down in the fridge for so long. To make it nice and smooth again, you can use a whisk or a spatula like I did. Simply beat it until it's smooth. Now transfer it to a piping bag. If you have a nozzle, use it. If you don't, it's totally fine. Place your piping bag in a tall cup, fold the edges over, and scrape the filling into it. And that's our beautiful, pipeable Belgian chocolate crème. Very easy, very simple. I stopped tempering my eggs a long time ago, and I've never looked back. Now let's whip up the cream real quick. In the bowl, I have double cream sugar and some vanilla paste, or vanilla syrup, call it what you want. You can use vanilla essence instead, but it's not as good. Whisk your cream until it's nice and thick, and transfer it to a piping bag, just as a chocolate filling. You could actually spoon it on, you don't really need a piping bag for this. But now we're ready for the final assembly. Grab a bun, slice it in half, use a serrated knife, and go in with a sawing motion. Don't just press the knife sideways, go back and forth and to the side. That'll give you a nice clean cut without tearing up the bun or squishing it. And now just go ahead and add some generous dollops of the chocolate filling. A little bit of that vanilla whipped cream in the middle. And to finish, I got some leftover hazelnuts. I chopped them up and roasted them. They will add an extra flavor and more importantly, a nice crunchy texture. And there you have it. That's how you make a Belgian chocolate brioche cake. Or a sweet burger. We could call it that. In any case, this thing is seriously good. But do let me know what you think of this down in comments. Have you ever tried a sweet burger before? And if you have any questions or suggestions, also let me know. And do check out my other brioche videos. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, because if you love bread and baking, you've come to the right place. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.